It was past midnight when Mark noticed the flickering neon sign of the bar across the street. His boss, Ms. Thompson, a sharp, no-nonsense CEO he'd worked under for years, stumbled toward the curb, clearly struggling to stay upright. Normally composed and intimidating in the boardroom, she looked human, fragile, and utterly exhausted. "Ms. Thompson?" he asked gently, rushing over. She squinted at him, a tipsy grin spreading across her face. "Mark, you're still working? How sweet." Her words slurred, but there was a vulnerability in her eyes he'd never seen before. Mark sighed inwardly. He knew she had a reputation for burning the candle at both ends, but seeing her like this made something click in him. Without a word, he offered his arm, guiding her to his car. The drive was quiet at first, punctuated only by her soft, hiccuping laughter at random streetlights. But then, unexpectedly, she started talking, not about work, not about strategy or deadlines, but about her fears, her loneliness, and the pressure she always carried in silence. Mark listened, his hands steady on the wheel, absorbing stories he'd never heard in boardroom meetings or email threads. When he finally pulled up outside her house, she looked at him with an honesty that startled him. "Mark," she said softly, "thank you. Not many would care to do this, for me." It wasn't flattery. It wasn't obligation. It was human connection, the quiet acknowledgement that kindness can bridge the gap between boss and employee, authority and heart. The next morning, Mark walked into the office, expecting awkward glances or hushed whispers about last night. To his surprise, everything felt normal. But something inside him had shifted. The vulnerability he'd witnessed in Ms. Thompson left a mark, and he realized that even the most confident people carried hidden burdens. Later that day, Ms. Thompson called him into her office. He braced for a scolding. After all, he had technically done something unprofessional by driving her home. But instead, she smiled, a quiet, genuine smile he rarely saw. "Mark," she began, her voice softer than usual, "I want to apologize for last night. Not just for getting drunk, but for never letting anyone see me struggle." She paused, as if weighing every word. "You showed me something I hadn't felt in years, trust and kindness without expectation." Mark nodded, unsure how to respond. "What you did wasn't just driving me home," she continued. "It was a reminder that humans, bosses, employees, whoever, need each other. That kindness matters." Her eyes glistened, and for a brief moment, the corporate walls melted away. From that day forward, the office atmosphere subtly shifted. Ms. Thompson started checking in on her team more genuinely, admitting when she needed help, and even sharing little moments of humanity. Mark noticed employees offering more support to each other, not out of obligation, but because they saw that compassion could come from anywhere, even the top of the hierarchy. Mark realized something profound. An act as simple as giving someone a safe ride home had rippled far beyond that night. It had opened a door, one of understanding, empathy, and human connection. And in that small gesture, the workplace became a little warmer, a little kinder. Weeks passed, but that night never left Mark's mind. He started noticing subtle changes, not just in Ms. Thompson, but in how people interacted around him. Meetings were less tense, laughter came easier, and small acts of kindness, holding the door, offering a coffee, checking in on someone's day, became more frequent. One Friday evening, as the office emptied, Mark stayed behind finishing a report. To his surprise, Ms. Thompson appeared at his desk, holding a stack of papers. She looked tired, yet there was a calmness in her demeanor he hadn't seen before. "Mark, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked. He nodded, curious. "I've been thinking about that night," she said, glancing down at the papers. "You probably don't realize it, but you changed something in me. I used to believe that showing vulnerability was weakness. I was wrong. You taught me courage, the courage to be human." Before he could respond, she hesitated, then added, "And I want to make it right. Not just for me, but for everyone here. I've started a program to support employees struggling with burnout, stress, or personal issues. Your simple act of kindness sparked this. Mark felt a lump in his throat. The gesture that had seemed so small to him had created a movement. He realized the truth of what she said: sometimes, the smallest actions have the largest impact. Driving someone home, listening when they speak, showing care without expectation, these were not just gestures, they were seeds of change. That evening, as he left the office, Mark walked past the city lights reflecting on the power of empathy. One act of compassion, he thought, can ripple through countless lives, changing hearts, perspectives, and even workplaces. And it all began with a single, selfless choice. A few weeks later, Mark was walking to his car after work when he noticed a young intern, Emma, sitting alone on the steps outside the building. She looked overwhelmed, scrolling frantically on her phone. Something about her expression reminded him of Ms. Thompson that night, the exhaustion, the quiet desperation. "Hey, Emma, everything okay?" he asked gently. She looked up, startled, and then tears welled in her eyes. I just don't know if I can handle all this," she whispered. "Everyone seems so perfect, and I feel like I'm drowning." Mark felt a pang of recognition. He remembered how powerless he'd felt witnessing his boss's vulnerability, and now it was mirrored in someone just starting her career. Without hesitation, he invited her for a short walk and listened as she poured out her worries, assignments, expectations, and fear of failure. As they walked, he realized something profound: kindness was contagious. His small act for Ms. Thompson had created an environment where compassion could flow naturally, reaching even those at the very bottom of the hierarchy. When they returned, Emma looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't think anyone would have stopped to listen." Mark smiled, thinking of Ms. Thompson's words about courage and humanity. It wasn't about grand gestures or recognition, it was about being present, showing care, and breaking the silence that often isolates people. Driving home that night, Mark reflected on how a single act of selflessness could start a chain reaction, touching lives he'd never imagined. He realized that true leadership wasn't just about power or titles, it was about empathy, connection, and the courage to act with a kind heart. And sometimes, he thought, all it takes is one person to spark a ripple that changes everything. Months had passed since that night, and the office had transformed in subtle but profound ways. Laughter was more genuine, people supported one another openly, and even deadlines felt less suffocating. Yet, for Mark, the true reward wasn't visible in spreadsheets or reports, it was in moments like the one that arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. He was heading to the break room when Ms. Thompson appeared, holding a small envelope. She handed it to him with a shy, almost childlike smile. "Open it," she said softly. Inside was a handwritten note: "Mark, your kindness that night taught me what it means to lead with heart. You reminded me, and everyone here, that compassion isn't weakness. You've changed this office, and maybe even my life. Thank you." Mark felt a lump in his throat. He realized that what had seemed like a simple ride home had grown into something far greater, a reminder that human connection, trust, and empathy could ripple far beyond the moment they occur. Later that week, Mark saw Emma, the intern, helping a new hire navigate a complex project, her own confidence strengthened by the kindness she had received. And Ms. Thompson? She walked the office floor more openly, listening, laughing, and sharing moments of vulnerability without fear. That night, as Mark drove home, he glanced at the city lights and thought about the power of small acts. One evening, one choice, one moment of selflessness had sparked a wave of change that touched lives he hadn't even met yet. He smiled, understanding the truth: kindness isn't about recognition, reward, or heroics. It's about being human, seeing others, and acting with compassion. And sometimes, that's all it takes to make the world a little brighter: one ride, one conversation, one heart at a time.